350 million years ago, Earth was the embodiment of a nightmare. The planet was swampy, dense with jungles, and crawling with giant insects. These creatures were far larger and far more dangerous than anything we see today. Dragonflies the size of hawks soared overhead. Millipedes longer than a crocodile slithered across the forest floor. And scorpions as big as small dogs waited in the shadows with stingers raised. But then, the impossible happened. These monsters shrank or disappeared altogether. The rulers of the skies and swamps were gone forever. The question haunted scientists for decades. What truly wiped out the giant insects? Was it climate change, a lack of food, or a new, more terrifying enemy? The story begins during the Carboniferous period, about 350 million years ago. Earth looked very different back then. Instead of wide-open plains or deserts, the world was covered in dense, swampy forests. Towering ferns and horsetails grew taller than houses. Trees didn't rot away like they do today. Instead, when they died, they fell into the swamps and piled up. Here's the strange part. At that time, there weren't yet bacteria able to break down wood, so instead of decomposing, the trees just stacked on top of each other. Over millions of years, this created thick layers of organic matter that would eventually become coal. But more importantly, this process trapped carbon dioxide underground, and the plants kept pumping out oxygen. Slowly, oxygen levels in the atmosphere rose to a record-breaking 35%. That's way higher than the 21% we breathe today. And this was the secret behind the giants. Insects don't breathe like us. They don't have lungs. Instead, they have tiny tubes called trachea that carry oxygen straight into their bodies. Normally, this limits how big they can get. The larger the insect, the harder it is to get enough oxygen through those tubes. But in a world drowning in oxygen, size limits vanished. Suddenly, insects could grow enormous. Dragonflies with wingspans of over 2 feet filled the skies. Millipedes reached 8.5 feet long and weighed as much as a small child. Scorpions grew to 2 feet long, armed with powerful pincers and venomous stingers. For millions of years, these giants ruled the planet. They were kings of the swamps, masters of the skies, and nightmares waiting to happen. But then, something changed. About 305 million years ago, oxygen levels started to drop. New bacteria evolved that could finally break down wood. This meant dead trees no longer just sat around. They decomposed, releasing carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. Less carbon dioxide trapped underground meant less oxygen in the air. Slowly, the oxygen levels fell, and the giant insects began to suffocate in their own world. At the same time, the Carboniferous rainforest collapse hit. The massive swamp forests broke apart into smaller patches. Food was harder to find, and habitats shrank. The once lush kingdom of the giants was crumbling. By the start of the Permian period, around 299 million years ago, oxygen levels had dropped close to modern levels. Giants like the monster millipede Arthropleura and huge dragonflies couldn't keep up. Many died out. Not all of them vanished right away. A few stubborn species held on for millions of years. The giant dragonfly relative Meganeuropsis still soared with wings almost 3 feet across. Some ancient butterfly-like insects called Paleodictyoptera buzzed around, feeding on spores and pollen. But even these survivors were living on borrowed time. As the climate shifted and oxygen dropped further, they too disappeared. And yet, the story doesn't end there. Here's the twist that shocked scientists. If oxygen levels alone explained giant insects, then when oxygen rose again later, they should have come back. And indeed, during the Cretaceous period, about 150 million years ago, oxygen levels increased once more, but the giants never returned. Why? The answer has feathers. During this time, the first birds appeared. One of the most famous was Archaeopteryx, a crow-sized creature with wings and feathers. These new predators hunted insects from the skies. Here's the problem for big insects. The larger they are, the harder it is to maneuver. Big wings mean slow turns and clumsy flight. Against fast, hungry birds, the giants didn't stand a chance. Large gliding insects were picked off one by one. And just when insects thought it couldn't get worse, bats showed up about 60 million years ago. These night hunters made life even harder. From then on, being small, quick, and agile was the only way to survive. The age of giant insects was officially over. Today, oxygen levels are about the same as they were in parts of the ancient world. So why don't we see hawk-sized dragonflies buzzing around? Because predators still rule the skies. Birds and bats keep insects in check. Even if oxygen levels were perfect, any insect that grew too large would just become a sitting duck, or rather, a bird's dinner. Scientists studying over 10,000 insect fossils proved this point. For the first 170 million years of insect evolution, oxygen controlled their size. But once birds appeared, predation became the new limit. Now let's play with the idea. What if humans were suddenly dropped into the carboniferous world of giant insects? At first, the oxygen-rich air would feel refreshing, but after a few breaths, you'd start to feel dizzy. Too much oxygen leads to oxygen poisoning, headaches, nausea, even fainting would set in. And while you're stumbling around, here's what you'd face. A scorpion 2 feet long with venom ready to strike. A millipede longer than your bed crawling nearby. A dragonfly the size of a hawk buzzing overhead, watching you. And in the water, ancient sharks and sea scorpions waiting to attack. In that world, humans wouldn't stand a chance. You wouldn't live long enough for the oxygen to kill you. Something else would get you first. So, what truly wiped out the giant insects? It wasn't one single event. It was a chain reaction: oxygen decline when bacteria learned to break down wood, rainforest collapse that destroyed habitats, food shortages as ancient plants disappeared, predatory pressure from birds and later bats. The giants didn't fall because of one disaster. They were pushed down step by step until only small insects remained. Even though the giants are gone, they left behind a fascinating legacy. Today's insects are small, but they carry the DNA of those monsters. Every time you swat a mosquito or see a dragonfly zip past, you're looking at the descendants of Earth's ancient rulers. And here's the creepy thought. If the balance of oxygen and predators ever shifted again, could giant insects return? Scientists say it's unlikely, but not impossible. For now, we can be thankful. Imagine trying to sleep knowing a dragonfly the size of a hawk might buzz into your room, or stepping outside and worrying about a scorpion bigger than your dog waiting in the bushes. The giants may be gone, but their story still gives us chills. The mystery of the giant insects isn't really a mystery anymore. Science has shown us how oxygen, climate, plants, and predators work together to shape their fate. But the story also reminds us of something bigger. Nature is always changing. What dominates the earth today may not rule tomorrow. The age of giant insects is over, but their strange and terrifying world will always spark our imagination. After all, they may be gone, but in our minds, they'll always live on as the rulers of Earth's first nightmare.